Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 143 in the series. I'm calling it Hats Off because I have all manner of hats, colorwork hats, baby hats, hats for dolls, it's hats for babies, hats, it's just hats. So you all know that usually I knit sweaters. Usually we talk about design and fit and modifications. We are going to talk about modifications, but not sweaters. This was my latest sweater. I talked about it in the last episode. Love this sweater. Gorgeous, beautiful. Go hang out in the other episode if you want to hear about it. But today it's all about hats. So welcome back to the yarn room. It is my happy place on a Sunday morning to come up here and talk to you all. If you're new, welcome. It's lovely to meet you. I hope you'll introduce yourself either here in the comments or over on the Ravelry group. And if you're coming back, welcome back. It's lovely to see all of you. I've been enjoying hanging out with so many of you on our Saturday Zoom sessions. We meet every Saturday at 3 o'clock Eastern. If you'd like the link to come join us, we are a friendly bunch. We like new people to come join us. You can just send me an email at knittingthestash@gmail.com and I'd be happy to send that over. We have a couple cows going on. We have the cowl that has to do with knitting yarn from the Flock Farm Yarn Shop. So I run an online yarn store that specializes in independent yarn from across the country in the US, and we're doing a cowl for sweaters that are knit out of any of the yarn in the shop. And I know a bunch of you have finished sweaters, so I'm very excited about that. There are going to be prizes, and that's over in the Ravelry group. And then the other cowl we're doing all year long is our TV media knitting cowl. And there are tons of new books coming out about sweaters and accessories and all kinds of fun things that have to do with TV shows or movies or books. So those are the things that we're knitting for our year-long cowl. I started off with a Lothlorien. Was it Lothlorien? I think it was a Lothlorien scarf. It was a Lord of the Rings scarf. I can't remember the exact name of it now. And I know a few of you have been sharing photos over on the Ravelry group and having some fun thinking about what you're still maybe knitting for this particular year. We usually run our years like October to October, so there's still plenty of time to get in on that. I still have plans for my Miley Cyrus sweater. Just haven't quite gotten there yet because I needed some extra brain space, which I've finally come around to. So yeah. What else do I tell you? I tell you where you can find me, especially if you're new to the podcast. I'm Knitting the Stash just about everywhere. So obviously here on YouTube, over on Ravelry, on Instagram, and I have a blog and there's a website, knittingthestash.com, and that's where you can find the Flock Farm Yarn Shop with all those fun yarns and classes and all that kind of great stuff. So if you're looking for me, Knitting the Stash should find me. And the last thing I want to mention before I jump into hats, and more hats is that you may have noticed that last week I released a free class on YouTube called How to Read a Sweater Pattern. This is a class that was housed over on Teachable, making some changes to Teachable very slowly. So that class has moved over to YouTube, and it is totally free. It has 5 lessons, how to read a sweater pattern. If you've never read or approached a sweater pattern before, this is your first time, that class is for you. And I've been getting such wonderful, kind, loving feedback from all of you on this class. Thank you so much. If you are trying to make sure you don't miss all these new videos that are coming out, you got to hit that subscribe thing on YouTube and do the little bell that tells you, there's like a little bell down at the bottom that'll say like, do you want to be notified? You say, yes, I do. And then you won't miss any of these fun videos that come out. So yeah, let's jump into hats. Now I have 2 segments here. And the first I had to film last week, because we had, at that point, a grandbaby on the way, and I had knit a bunch of little baby hats for the grandbaby, the new grandbaby. And today, of all days, the baby was born this morning. So yay, we have a new grandbaby. And we don't have all the details yet. Some of our children are all the way over on the West Coast, so we don't get to actually just go out and see the baby and do all the fun things. But so far everybody's happy and healthy, and the hats did arrive, I think yesterday or the day before. So yeah, perfect timing. So I will put a segment in here from last week where I talk all about the baby hats. So that'll be first up. And next up, I have a fun colorwork hat that I need to talk to you about. This one was definitely a little bit of a labor of love, and it goes with an adorable little doll. So hang around for that segment after I talk about the baby hats. So let's talk about those baby hats. They kept me busy this past week, mostly trying to find good superwash worsted weight yarn and trying to find good patterns. So I found a couple of patterns. They're actually free patterns, and I'd love to send you over to the designers because the patterns were excellent, easy to knit, easy to follow, and both of them offered a bunch of different sizes, which I think is kind of crucial for baby hats. So as you know, I have a little grandbaby on the way due in April, and I asked his parents, what do you guys actually need? And aside from diapers, which we sent, they asked for a sleeping cap and a cap with ear flaps. So those were the two hats I was looking for when I was looking around Ravelry. Now there are a lot of baby hat patterns out there, and the two that I'm going to talk about today I think are, like I said, they're really excellent for a lot of different reasons. The first one is the Maine Baby Hat by Fiber of Maine, and the Maine Baby Hat is a cool recipe kind of pattern. So it is a free pattern on Ravelry, like I mentioned. I'm trying to find it here. I've got it in my pile of things. So this is one of the main pages of the Maine Baby Hat. And as you can see, there's a lot of different variations. You can do whatever you want with this hat. You can add stripes, you can do a ribbed bottom, you can do an I-cord bottom, you can change the top to create a little curly Q, whatever you want to do. There's lots of different variation here, and you can just add your own style to the hat, which is a pattern that I love. I love recipes where you can just obviously modify and do your own thing. And then this one has newborn, baby, and toddler sizes, and it has different yarn weights. So if you wanted to make something out of fingering weight, sport weight, DK worsted, or a heavy worsted, they do say that bulky weight might be a little bit too much for a newborn, and I kind of tend to agree. So this great little chart that comes with this free pattern pretty much sets you up for knitting hats of all kinds, because like I said, you could add things to these hats. If you're like a big hat maker, you could add the ear flaps just to this hat if you knew what you were doing and you were comfortable with that kind of thing. So I think this is a wonderful, accessible, really awesome pattern, and it produced this adorable little hat. And Fiber of Maine, I also really was excited to find them because they support local fiber artists and crafters from Maine. So they're really interested as a company and a website in like helping to support local to them sheep to skein yarns. It's like farm to skein yarns. It's the kind of thing I like to do, you know. So I was happy to find that they're doing the same thing out in Maine. So if you go to their website, you can check out all of the yarn and notions and crafters, little things that they have that are all made by people in Maine, which is really cool. So this is the hat, and it is, I think I made the baby size in a worsted weight yarn because newborns are only newborns for like a second. And then their heads get bigger, and then that's it. So this hat I thought might actually fit the new grandbaby for a little bit longer. And you can see I chose the ribbed edging at the bottom. It's very simple straight knitting and then just simple decreases at the top. So even if you've never knit a hat and you want to get started, and this would be a great beginning pattern to try because you're working in the round, you're working mostly in stockinette, you are doing a little ribbing, and then you get to practice some decreases at the top. Now I added the little I-cord, and instead of doing the curly Q like they suggested, I just made it long enough and then kind of like crossed it back over itself and tucked it back into the hat so that I could weave in the end in the center circle here. So it just has a little, you know, a little curly Q hook on the top there. So I thought it might be nice if they wanted to hang the hat up, or I don't know, it's just a little adorable. I mean, things that are cute on the tops of babies' heads, it's kind of just adorable, right? The yarn I used was all Stash yarn, and I did have to struggle a little bit to find a worsted weight superwash yarn. But the first one that I found that was really great was actually, after cleaning out my sweater bin, this Bingo yarn from Lana Grossa, which I mentioned before when I was doing my sweater bin clean out. I found an extra skein of it in there. This was yarn I used from my mom's sweater, and it's a simple superwash merino worsted weight yarn. Nothing too special about it. I don't particularly love it. It's not like a yarn I'd go back to again and again for sweater knitting per se. Gift sweater knitting, yes, because it's machine washable, which is really key for any kind of gift knitting. And it's one of the reasons that I picked it for this particular hat. And you can see this hat, which is, like I said, the baby size, took up almost one skein. These are pretty small little balls of yarn. They're pretty inexpensive. You can get them on webs for a discount. They have lots of different colors. So if you're thinking of knitting baby hats, I'd highly recommend this one. It is soft, durable, superwash, so you can throw it in the machine. And one little ball will get you a baby hat, which looks pretty adorable. And I washed this with just some of that, wool wash soap, and it's very soft. I dried it by taking a bell jar. Is that what it is? A ball jar. And I just set the hat up on the ball jar so that it would dry this way rather than trying to dry it flat. Yeah, and that's the first little hat, and I think it's kind of like a larger size, just in case that baby's gonna grow. That's what happens, right? So that's the first baby hat. And I promised you I got very busy, so I knit 2 other baby hats. The next one is a hat with ear flaps, because that was one of the requests. So this is the Flurry Flap Hat by Kim Hamlin. And it's another free pattern over on Ravelry. It is another excellent pattern, and it comes in sizes for baby, child, small adult, and then I think medium and large adult, something like that. It's about 5 different sizes. So I was tempted to make one for Spencer and I as well, for Spencer and me as well, but I didn't yet. So I've been a little busy with hat making. So yeah, maybe Spencer will get one though for Christmas, because it's really quite adorable with the little ear flaps. So Kim Hamlin runs Fiber and Vine in another Maine shop. This one's in Norway, Maine. And if you're up in Norway, Maine, visit the shop. It seems like a really cute little shop. She is a multi-crafter. She does needle felting and knitting. And I think the shop is called Fiber and Vine because they do both yarn and wine. How can you go wrong, really? I mean, yeah, so Kim Hamlin, this is the Flurry Flap Hat. And again, it comes in all these different sizes. You basically create the ear flaps first, and then you cast on your stitches for your front and your back, and you knit your garter kind of headband. You work your way up straight and stockinette, and then you do your decreases for the crown at the top. So it's a very simple hat, and like I said, it's a free pattern. I'm not giving anything away here, but do go check her out. Check out the rest of her patterns. Download this pattern if you want to make little baby hats, or a hat for yourself or someone else that has ear flaps. I really want to be able to pull this on. Like, I really think it would be fun because it looks cozy and warm. So this one was knit on US 9 needles. Again, worsted weight, superwash yarn. This one was from Knit Crate. So I was one of those Knit Crate people for a while before they went out of business. And this was, I think this is the Kestrel colorway. Beautiful worsted weight yarn. And superwash. Again, these were like the things I wanted. Worsted so that it would be fast to knit, and superwash so that they could just throw it in the machine. They have 2 other small children. This is the 3rd baby. So this is going to be like machine washable is a must. And it's, like I said, a super simple pattern. This is the infant size, I believe, the baby size in that pattern. And then I went ahead and knit a larger one, the child size from the pattern. And this is also knit up in Knit Crate. Same Knit Crate worsted. I think it's the Knitology worsted. And it is same construction, but instead of working the I-cord with the yarn held double like I did for the bottom of the finishing of this hat, I just did it, held it single, and I only used 2-stitch I-cord instead of a 3-stitch I-cord, just to give it a little bit less bulk on the bottom of the hat. It really did need the finishing though. I will say I washed this one, I blocked it, and I thought to myself, does it really need finishing? And then I looked at it after I washed it, and the superwash yarn was just a little loose around a couple of points where I had joined the ear flaps to the main part of the hat. So the finishing is a nice touch because it just, it pulls everything together. It kind of adds some stability to the hat, especially because it does have these ear flaps. So I'm pretty happy with the finishing. And this is one of the color kind of blocks or stripe motifs that she offers in the pattern. And I just happened to find this gradient set of superwash merino from Knit Crate in my stash. So I think this is in the colorway like Skies or something like that. So it was 4 different skeins, and I used 3 of them for the hat. So the main color is what I use, this darkest color for the main part of the hat. Then I used kind of like the pop of color for this upper part and the contrast for the finishing. And I used one of the I think it was like the 3rd color or something as the crown on the top, and you can see the crown. I think I messed up the decreases or something on this one. That's the nice thing about baby hats. It doesn't matter. no one's going to really see or care. And these things are going to get a lot of wear and a lot of washing. So I figure, you know, it's just perfect the way it is. So yeah, I've been busy knitting baby hats, which is actually incredibly satisfying. You can finish one of these in a night and an evening, like no problem. Cast on, you know, do the knitting, bind off, and then do the finishing all in one night, which is amazing. So yeah, so this is the child size. You can see it's a little bit bigger. This is the baby size. I'm going to send both of those, and I'm going to send the Maine Baby Hat for the sleeping cap for the baby once it gets a little bit bigger. So yeah, these are all getting packaged up and shipped off, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to come up to the yarn room and do this baby hat segment now, is because these need to go in the post today. The baby's due, I think, I want to say next week. So we got to get these out, and I couldn't wait until my normal Saturday time. So that's why you've got this little segment popped into the podcast. Yeah, because I was knitting some baby hats and they've got to go in the mail. So I'm pretty psyched that those hats made it all the way to Washington State before the baby was born. We'll see how well they fit his head. You never know with newborns, right? Like they have big heads when they're born, and then they just keep getting bigger. So yeah, I think I might need to make more hats, more sizes, and just send them like boxes of hats, you know. They have 2 older kids too, and everybody needs a good hat. So yeah, I'm gonna get to work on that one. But let's move on to the other hat I made this week, and that is the hat for Sven. This is a colorwork wonder of a hat, and I kind of want to make one for myself. Like, I can totally imagine just having a really, really cool, like, floppy, sleepy hat, because that's how it kind of fits his head. I'll show you in a minute. It's meant to kind of just hang off his head in the back, but you can see the colorwork is pretty gorgeous. I copied this colorwork. I actually made a chart for this colorwork from Susan B. Anderson's version of the Sven Doll. I use Stitch Fiddle, which is an amazing program. You can use it. There's a free version online where you can use it to make charts for colorwork and cables and lace and things like that. And I use that program all the time when I'm doing design work. And I used it this time to kind of look at her hat very closely. And I charted out what she had done and then used that chart to knit the hat. So that was kind of fun. And the hat goes along with the doll. Now this is Sven, and I need to put his hat on him because I think he actually looks a little better with his hat on. So his head is an odd size. It's a very large head, but once you put the hat on with the beard, it looks a little bit more normal, I think. And so this is Sven. And I found out about Sven from Susan B. Anderson. She does wonderful knitted toys, and I've knit a few of her toys in my time as a knitter. I made a panda and a sheep and a couple other things. So she does really cool little knitted dolls, and occasionally she'll put out, not occasionally, but the kits come out for these toys not all at once. Like she's a very small yarn company. A lot of her yarn, as far as I understand, it's a woolen spun yarn, and it's produced by Blackberry Ridge Woolen Mill, which is out in Wisconsin. And so they don't always have all the kits in stock all the time. So when she first did on her blog a version of Sven and Solveig and showed what she had done and then said she was going to have kits, I was like, oh, that's really cool. And the kits sold out like immediately. So the minute they came back on the website, I grabbed one. I was pretty excited because the kit comes with, I think, 7 or 8 colors of the woolen spun yarn, and it's a beautiful yarn. It's the same yarn I used for, like I said, the little penguin that I made from another kit. So it's the same weight. This is a fingering weight yarn, woolen spun, 7 different colors in this kit, and then I opted to get the original booklet as well. This is the original patterns from Carol Anderson and Christy Williams from 1983, and this is the revised 1996 edition. I think they're out of these now. This was like a special edition that came with the kits. But what's cool about it is the pattern is still available on Ravelry and I think on maybe Carol's website. So you can still get the Sven Doll, the original instructions. And if you buy the kit, you get a little bit more info from Susan B. Anderson's modifications. It's a modification project, right? So her modifications in terms of the colors, the sizing of the doll, because the yarn in the kits is a fingering weight rather than a DK weight. I think that was used in the originals. And you get all the info on the color choices and how she made the head a little bit smaller and made the whole doll a little bit smaller. Now, all of those modifications are available on her website. So if you get the pattern on Ravelry, the original pattern from Carol and Kristin on Ravelry, then you can still go to Susan B. Anderson's website, and all of the modifications are there for the hat and the head and the body and everything else. So that's what I did. The original pattern's great, and you can check back on Ravelry. A lot of the old original pattern projects are there, so you can really see a lot of variation in what people have done with this toy. And they're absolutely adorable. People have done very different things with the beards and the mustaches and the hair and the hats and the bodies and everything. So it's a very inspiring kind of project in that respect, because it's really adorable to see what people have done. I was showing some of them to Spencer, and he said, "I think people make the dolls look like them." And I was like, "That's interesting." But I don't think I look like this Sven character. Maybe I'll look a little bit like Solveig, who's the his kind of female counterpart. I'll have to see about that one, and you'll let me know, I'm sure, when I bring her in for the next podcast. So what do I want to tell you about Sven here? I was really surprised by the fact that this is actually all in one go. Like, it's not pieces that are sewed together. I did very little sewing. I don't think I did. Oh, the sewing I did was on the bottoms of the feet. There was some Kitchener at the bottoms of the feet. That's it. There's not really any sewing involved here. I had originally thought that you would knit the body, and then you'd knit the sweater and the pants and the whole thing, and it was like, interchangeable. But it's not. You start at the top of the head, and I did a pinhole cast on up here. And, he's got a little bit of a funny head bump up there like that. So you do a pinhole cast on, you knit the head with some shaping, and then you immediately switch over to the actual sweater ribbing. So the sweater ribbing is literally knit directly onto his, neck here. And then likewise, when you get down to the pants, you actually pick up stitches underneath the sweater hem and knit down to make the pants. So it's like this continuous knitting down for this doll. No sewing, except for the Kitchener at the very bottom when you're closing things up. So yeah, even the mitts, it's all picked up stitches, and you make the mitts. The beard is great. The kit comes with these mohair locks in this adorable little bag, which I wasn't expecting, but there are all these little mohair locks in here, and you basically pull the mohair out, and with a tapestry needle thread a small bit of mohair, and you can see, I think you'll be able to see, let me turn the camera so that I can see if you can see, you basically thread it through a stitch and let it hang on either side, and when you're from a distance, it creates this kind of like bearded effect where you don't actually see the individual bits of mohair that have been pulled through the stitching. So yeah, I'm very happy with Sven. I think Sven is very cuddly and squishy. The other thing I did was I didn't have any normal, what would you call that, like non-wool batting that I would normally use for a toy. So I ramped my stash, and I remembered that Georgia Rustic Wool, Joanne, had sent me some wool batting, some Gulf Coast native wool batting, which is gorgeous. And I know she was thinking about having this up on her website. And we were talking about maybe getting it in the shop. So if this is something you're interested in having in the shop, wool batting, 100% Gulf Coast native, let me know. I tested it out in Sven. I love the results. He's like super squishy. I've not used like 100% wool batting before for a toy, and it's so much more, I don't know how to describe it. It's like warm, and it gives much more than the kind of like fake industrial batting that you'd buy at like a big box store. So I highly recommend stuffing your things with wool if you haven't done it before. You can of course make your own bats. If you have wool, all you need to do is just like card it up, put it into bat, he's flipping him around, sorry, put it into bat form, and then you just use it to stuff your dolls. Make sure that it's clean wool. Of course, you want to make sure that it's clean, been washed, and all that good stuff. But I absolutely loved using this Georgia Rustic Wool batting for this doll, and I would really recommend it. I'm going to talk to Joanne and see if she is making more of it, and whether or not I can put some in the shop, because I think that might be kind of fun to have. So Sven is finished, and his cap was actually took the longest. I think his cap took longer than he did because I was changing all these different colors for the color work. And I haven't washed it yet. You can kind of see that it needs to be washed so that some of the stitches will relax a little bit. So I think I might wash his hat. I did not actually wash the doll itself, which is kind of interesting. I debated, I went back and forth, like, should I wash the actual knitted stuff before I stuffed it and before I added the mohair, but I just decided it was fine the way it is. So that's one of the reasons that I think his sweater is sitting a little funny. Maybe I'll steam him later. I don't know. I just like him the way he is. But his hat, I think I will wash, and it'll soften the whole thing up a little bit. Yeah, and you can see the little patterns on here are, if you have the original pattern, they're just variations of the motifs that you actually have in the pattern to begin with. So there's a lot of fun things like that. And if you want, if you want to be horrified, one of the things to do is look at the Ravelry project pages and look at the versions that people are working on right now. If they took photographs before they stuffed the head and the body, it's really terrifying because the head is actually very large and when it's laid flat and it's like kind of lifeless and not stuffed, it's definitely like, I felt like I was looking through some like horror movie slides when I was looking at some of those whips. Not that the whips aren't going to turn out wonderfully, but it's just like the flat version of these dolls is really kind of weirdly creepy. So yeah, if you need a good horror fix, that's one thing to do. Once they're stuffed, they're all adorable. And I loved all the variation, the different colors that people use, the different styles of hats and beards. They're just really adorable dolls. So anyway, that's Sven. This is by Carol Anderson and Christy, what's her last name? Christy Williams from 1983, and with all the modifications from Susan B. Anderson much later in the 2000s. So yeah, I gotta find a place for him and make up a little companion for him so that I can have a couple of these hanging around the yarn room, I think. Yeah, so hats off. So that's it for today. Lots of hats, babies, toys, all the fun stuff for a Sunday morning. I want to make sure I say thank you to the patrons out there: Jennifer, Nico, Rose, Erika, Kendra, and Nargis. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast and being producers. If you're interested in that, there's some details below where you can support the podcast on Ko-fi or on Patreon. Really appreciate all the support. It means the most to me that you all care about this. You comment, you leave nice notes, you send me emails. All of those things are wonderful, and I really appreciate them. So until next time, I hope you have some fun knitting and hanging out and find some good springtime, maybe. Yeah. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.